Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio, and it is Friday night, February 26th, 9:30 p.m. Calgary time, and I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and we've been covering all last week a workbook that I found on the website. It's the ASCA Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program at www.ascasupport.org, and this Survivor to Thriver workbook is on there, and it's available for anyone who wants to take a look at it. They have it there for for self-help, and anyone's welcome to go onto the website and check it out. And I found it very interesting, well, actually more than interesting, very helpful. And I'm going to go through the program myself, just on my own. And so I thought I'd just share some of it. I don't know if I'll share the whole thing. It's 115 pages, so that's what we'll be looking at tonight. And yeah, I'm glad you can be here. Glad you can tune in. I appreciate all the support. I have lots of supporters in the UK and the US and Canada, and I just thank you all so much for your support and for tuning in and for everything that you do to help stop child abuse and to help prevent and stop child abuse and prevent and stop human rights abuses, right? This show, I figured this show should be really about the issues surrounding child abuse and human rights abuses, domestic violence, all types of abuse, really, because I just feel that it needs to stop, and we all have to get involved if we're going to ever see any change. So that's why, I'm doing this show. And, yeah, it's not a professional show, and I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapy or therapist certificates. I'm just a person who pays to do this show. I pay my own money just to do this show to get information out to people, because I just know that there's not enough about abuse being talked about, except for what we see in the paper and on the news, and then it's too late, because it's usually a case of someone being murdered, a child being murdered, or somebody dying from results from abuse. And so we really need to start talking about it before it becomes that kind of information in the paper. And that's why I'm doing this show. I just think that it's just not talked about enough, and it should be front and center on the paper. It should be on the front page every day until we start to see some really positive change, and regarding child rights and human rights. It's just so huge. So many people are suffering around the world, and that's why I just want to be one more voice out there, just to add to all the other voices that are already out there doing phenomenal work to make a difference in this world. And I thought, I'm in between courses at MRU, so why not just be one more voice, And Gail Crabtree from Voices of Hope here on Blog Talk Radio is really the inspiration for that, because I was listening to her show, and it's a great show, and I really, admire her, and she's really she's a hero to me, and she has her own blog and hopeforhealing.org website and blog, and Voices of Hope. It's a Blog Talk Radio program that I really advise anyone to listen to. It's really great. She's got some good guests and awesome information all the time, and she's just an awesome lady. And that's who I got the idea to do this from. I had no intentions of starting a Blog Talk Radio show, but I was listening to her show, and this was, way back when I first started doing this, quite a few months ago. And I came across her show and then started my own show, and I thought, yeah, why not? I'll do it once a week and just bring some information to people regarding abuse and child abuse especially. And it's just turned into, like 10 shows or 11 shows a week. But that's because I figure if I'm going to pitch out money, then I may as well get on the air and start talking, because my whole, I'm an advocate for child rights and human rights, and I just think that we all need to raise our voices. My voice is no more important than anybody else's. It just takes someone's time, really, to just start talking about it, get it out in the open where it needs to be, and not hidden away and shoved under the carpet and locked behind doors. And it just needs to be brought out front and center, and abuse needs to stop, and abusers need to be stopped. And I just think we have so much work to do and very little time, because kids are dying and adults are dying, domestic violence, domestic abuse and stuff. So yeah, this show covers all abuse topics. Please listen at your own discretion. You know where you're at in your healing process and your healing journey. I know where I'm at. And I know that I'm okay listening to this stuff, but a lot of people might find it very sensitive, and because abuse is a sensitive topic. So you want to make sure that you're in a safe place when you're listening to this. And the Survivor to Thriver workbook on the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse website, the Survivor to Thriver workbook has, I believe it's the first 30-something pages, all dealing with safety first. So you have to be in a safe place when you're going to go through the Survivor to Thriver workbook. We all do. And we have to be in a safe place when we're going to listen to topics about abuse, right? So if you think it could trigger you, or it might cause you to be uncomfortable, if it's a topic that really just bothers you, then it's your decision to make the right decision to turn it off, because you're the only one that can be responsible for what you listen to. And so if you just think, oh, it's just not a topic for me, then please turn it off. It's not, you would not be hurting my feelings. And but if you're up for it, then please do hang on. And children, young kids and youth under the age of 18, I ask that you please get someone to listen to this show with you. There's a lot of crazy online people out there, online predators and strange people out there, getting a hold of kids, and it's just terrible. So I think, I just hope and pray that you have someone who cares enough about what you're listening to that would listen to this show with you, and just to make sure it's something that you should be listening to. And then they can be a support system for you, right? A support person, a family member, a parent. I sure hope you have a parent who really cares, and it'd make my heart really glad. And, or someone like a teacher, counselor, or, someone that you really trust who can listen to the show with you. Tonight's topic is very, very sensitive. We're going to talk about sexual abuse. I have done lots of stuff on sexual abuse already, and especially Little Warriors. I did a whole week-long talk about littlewarriors.ca, and that's a group up here out of Edmonton, Alberta, and they have a great website. I really highly recommend it, www.littlewarriors.ca, and that really deals with child sexual abuse. And this article here in the Survivor to Thriver workbook deals with adult survivor issues of people who suffered from sexual abuse. So that's what this topic is about tonight. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing on the air. I'm just going to read parts of it, and you can go and actually read this for yourself if you're really interested. And it is at www.ascasupport.org. I have that in my chat room typed up there tonight, just in case anybody's sitting in there, so they can get a hold of the information. And yeah, I just welcome anyone who's okay to listen to the show to please hang on there. We got about 22 minutes, and we're going to just start reading right from the page. I think it's quite interesting. There's so much child sexual abuse going on. It's something that no one wants to talk about. It's something that no one wants to hear, and it's something that no one wants to know about, right? I mean, it's so horrible and so violating, and the sad thing is, it's happening all over the place, and not just North America. It's happening all around the world regarding, child exploitation, sexual, sex trafficking, everything, right? It's just going on all over the place. It really has to stop, and so. There's no, it's a crime, and it's wrong, and so we just need to all stand up for these kids, right? I mean, we just need to say, you know what, no, it's wrong, it has to stop. Do whatever you can in your own community, do whatever you can in your own homes, in your own communities, in your own cities and towns. Get involved in whatever way you can to stop child sexual abuse. You don't have to be a parent, and you can be a concerned citizen and get your 2 cents in and get your voice raised to say, stop all abuse, right? Stop child abuse. And, we just all have to get involved. And even if you weren't abused as a child, it doesn't matter. It's what's in your heart. It's a matter of wanting to see change in this world. And there's no shame in getting involved and to help a child abuse survivor, or to help a child to not be abused, right? If you suspect abuse, make the phone call. It's the only right thing to do. So, you could save a child's life, right? So we're going to start reading here, and I'm not going to, like I said, some of it I'm not going to read just because it's so sensitive, but others, anyone who wants to go on the website and read that for themselves, that's fine. But parts of it I'm going to go ahead and read just because some of it really details, sort of more of the emotional abuse that goes on along with the sexual abuse, right? And that's what a lot of adult survivors have to deal with. And of course, the children deal with it their whole lives. And when they grow up as adults, they carry this on into their adult life, and there's just so many issues surrounding it. And so this section of this workbook here is pretty detailed, and they have lots of questions that they ask. And we're supposed to be, as we go through this workbook, we're supposed to be in a group setting or with someone that we trust, and that we know who's going to be there to support us when we go through this workbook. And that way, if we start to it triggers us or whatever, it makes us feel bad or down, it brings back memories, then we can have someone there to support us and just to be that support person for us. So they did say it's a self-help book. You can do it on your own, but you have to know that you can handle the material. And so that's the whole issue. If you can't handle the material, you don't want to do the workbook. And there's a whole, like that whole first safety first part is all about, making sure we're in a safe enough place, in far enough along in our healing to get that support, or just to make it through the workbook without, having problems. So that's the whole issue, right? So I'll just start reading. It says sexual abuse is defined as any sexual act directed at a child involving sexual contact, assault, or exploitation. Sexual abuse is divided into two categories: contact and non-contact. And, acts of contact child sexual abuse include rape, fondling, incest, and lewd and lascivious acts. And examples of non-contact sexual abuse would be exhibitionism, presentation of pornographic pictures, telling of sexual stories and things like that, right? Allowing the child to witness adult sexual relations and things like that, and treating the child in a sexually provocative way or promoting prostitution in minors. So those are the non-contact, right? And so there's, it just involves so many different, aspects, child sexual abuse, and it's just horrible, just wrong. And if you're out there and you're suffering with this, please make sure you get some help. This show is not to replace professional help. I really suggest and highly recommend that if we are in a place in our lives where we just can't cope, then we need to reach out and get help. I'm not beyond that myself, and I just think that everybody deserves a chance to have a good life. And so, we're not put on the earth to suffer at the hands of someone else. And so if you've dealt with abuse or child abuse or domestic violence, domestic abuse, make sure that you get some good support from like some of these support groups that are out there, which I belong to quite a few of them, and they're all awesome. You meet people on there that just are so, they want to see you well because they are working on their own healing and they want to be well. So it's so good, right? And they say here, we'll go on, physical signs that may suggest sexual abuse of children include sexually transmitted diseases. This is sort of what a person could look out for, right? If you work with children, or if you have children that live near you, or you're a parent yourself and you have lots of like young kids around because of your children. These are signs that we can look for: sexually transmitted diseases, infection, physical injury, difficulty walking or sitting, stomach aches, headaches, and psychosomatic symptoms. And they did say, again, most, if not all of these symptoms can result from other non-abuse related causes or conditions. Please keep this in mind as you evaluate your own history, they said. But still, they are, visible symptoms that people can know. And we should all know the signs and symptoms of child abuse, because how else are we going to report it unless a child comes to you and discloses abuse? We want to be looking, a lot of kids won't, because they've been told their lives have been threatened at home and they're told not to tell anyone, and, this is our secret, type of thing, right? So, they might not say anything, and so it's up to, the people out there, the adults and stuff, and the people that are actually working with children on a daily basis, teachers and healthcare providers, to really know this stuff, and I know that most of them do. But the general public could get involved too, and I think that's what needs to happen. I really do. And, it's so important, right? We got to look out for these kids, right? Well, these kids today and the kids tomorrow and the next generation, right? This is just going to keep going on unless we stop it, unless we actually stand up and say no more. And it's going to take us. It's going to have to take us, you and me, and whoever else is joining in here, to say no more. You know what I mean? And I'm joining all those out there who are saying no more, stop child abuse, because, I'm happy to join and put my voice in there, because it's wrong. Behavioral signs that may result from sexual abuse include age-inappropriate sexual behavior with peers or toys, excessive curiosity about sexual matters, overly advanced understanding of sexual behavior, especially in younger children, and compulsive masturbation, prostitution, or promiscuity, and incontinence and things like that. Once again, these symptoms may be the result of other occurrences, and you should be wary of jumping to any conclusions. Still, it seems to me, if you suspect abuse, that's what I've seen on so many websites, and I believe it myself. If we even suspect abuse, then you want to do the proper thing, which is make the phone call. And there's ways to know how to talk to a child who, if they come to you and disclose that they've been abused or they are being abused. There's certain questions you ask, and there's certain questions you don't ask, because you can ruin a court case. If you don't do it properly, you can ruin a court case by asking the wrong questions. Because if you ask any leading questions, or you don't get the just write down what the child said in their own words, not in your interpretation, but just their own words. There's so many specific rules to this that, and it's so important. I think everybody should know how to go about doing that, because you don't want to ruin a court case for a child who's being abused, right? Because they could end up staying in the home and being killed, and it's just horrible. And if not killed, well, they're going to suffer on for the rest of their lives until they're out of that home, and then they're going to deal with adult survivor issues for the rest of their entire lives instead of getting help, which they so badly and truly need, right? Concern about and awareness of sexual abuse have grown dramatically in recent years as numerous public surveys have reported its pervasiveness. It is currently estimated that up to 1/3 of all women and up to 1/7 of all men over the age of 21 have been sexually abused as children. So that's 1/3 of all women and up to 1/7 of all men over the age of 21 have been sexually abused as children. Sexual abuse may be the final skeleton in the family closet, one that has been obscured for years or even generations behind a veil of secrecy and denial. Thanks to the emergence of the adult survivor movement, men and women who have suffered from childhood sexual abuse for years as children are now breaking their silence about their secret. And I think that's just awesome, and that's what I'm doing. And, no more silence. Silence is the problem. And, it allows the perpetrators of these crimes to go free and to walk free, while this, the victim, or survivor of the abuse is kept in this world of pain and anguish. And it's just wrong, so wrong. No more silence. I broke the silence, and I put my story out there, and I'm glad that I did, because it just encourages more people to know that, if it freed me. I'm a free person because I'm not carrying that around inside of me any longer, right? It's been allowed to come out where it should be, which is the public eye. And not everybody's ready to do that. I wouldn't have been ready years ago. There's no way. And even up to just like 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been ready to do something like that. But within the last 6 months, I really found the strength to do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because now I realize I'm walking free from having to carry that around just by myself. So, that's just me, and I wouldn't suggest it for everybody, because you might not be far along enough in your healing process to do that. But it's something that you could discuss with a counselor or a therapist or someone that you really trust, and eventually you might decide to do that. I can't tell you what would be good for you, but I just know that it really helped me. And so, I just, because I think silence is the problem. That's why nobody's talking about child abuse. Nobody's talking about sexual abuse, because everybody's just thinking, well, if we push it under the carpet, we won't have to deal with it. And if we push it under the carpet, then then nobody will know about it. The survivor's sitting there thinking that, well, if we just keep the door locked and push it under the carpet, nobody will know that I suffered this horrible abuse, right? And the perpetrators of the abuse are sitting there saying, yeah, if we just keep this locked up or pushed under the carpet, I walk free, and and everybody else and everybody who knows me thinks I'm just the greatest person, right? When in reality, they're just an abuser who's very sick. So, this is the whole thing. Silence is wrong, and I think it just should be broken, at the right time for the survivors, of course. But for young children, man, I'm telling you what, we have to look out for them. And if they, if you suspect abuse, like I said before, I can't say it enough, make the phone call. Because if they're not being abused, well, then they won't be removed from the home, will they? There's just, what I mean? It doesn't, and there's going to be instances where they go wrong and they do remove the child in error, and because this is not a perfect world. But you know what? the amount that are getting removed who are being abused is worth it, because you know what? There's so many children out there. We don't even know how many cases are unreported because they're just unreported. So just when you think about what's reported, it's mind-boggling, it's staggering, and it really, it just makes me really angry. So I think, we just really got to, we need to stand up and find out what's going to work in our local communities, and find out what's working and support those programs. That's what I think we should do, is just take a proactive look at what is working, and instead of looking at what's not working. Take a look at what is working and then build on that. Build on the strengths of the communities and the cities and stuff, and at least it is progress then, right? And then in the meantime, this other stuff can kind of come up behind it, right? Things that weren't thought of or whatever. But just supporting anyone who's doing any good work for children, to stop child abuse, to me is worth supporting. Sometimes, sometimes abused children think that if they couldn't stop the abuse, then they were at least partially responsible for it. Trends in state laws challenge this kind of thinking. For example, in California, if the child victim is under the age of 14, any sexual contact with an adult is presumed to be sexual abuse, even if the child has purportedly consented. In the case of child victims over the age of 14 who may have consented to the sexual contact, the issue is determined by looking at a number of factors, including the age of the adult, the nature of the relationship, and the emotional maturity of the child. Some teenagers under the age of 18 may not have sufficient psychological maturity to consent to a relationship with someone much older, while others may be deemed to have consented. The determination will vary in each situation. So that's interesting, and I'm not really quite sure what year this book was written. It doesn't say on the actual pages. It might say, in 99, revised in 99. So, the statistics are definitely not going to be current, and so we don't have those numbers right here tonight, but we can certainly take a look at it, right? Like what's changed and stuff like that. But it is, it's quite interesting for sure that the different states have different rules, different countries have different rules on all that, different laws in place, and different rulings. So it is quite interesting. There are many factors that place children at risk for sexual abuse, especially in an era of high divorce rates and blended families. Children are most likely to be sexually abused between the ages of 8 and 12. Girls are more at risk for sexual abuse than boys. Statistics show 1 out of every 3 girls compared to 1 out of every 7 boys. And girls who are abused are more likely to live in a blended family or with a single mother who is employed outside the home. When a natural father is the abuser, the girl's mother is often absent or uninvolved for some reason. She may be disabled, ill, working outside of the home, or alcoholic. Factors such as these may result in less than adequate caregiving and a lack of parental authority. And the parents' marital relationship may be in discord, and the parents may be avoiding dealing with each other. Ever so gradually, the father may begin to place the girl in the role of wife. So, this can happen, right? It says sexual abuse also happens to boys, although not to the extent reported for girls. But see, they don't know because it's so underreported, right? The male victim, they're just, in society, with the way that society, has just over the years, the thousands of years, presented men as being the strong ones who don't talk about these things. They're the strong ones, so how could they let something like that happen to them? And, they're considered, they almost look down upon as being weak or something if they actually allowed something like that to happen to them or something. There's a whole, I don't know. It's a really bad way to look at it. Men are people too, and they suffer abuse just like women. But for a lot of guys have a lot of problems reporting abuse because of that, and just they just know that they're not going to get very much help from the police or from other services. Now it is changing. I did a whole thing on male victims not too long ago. Actually, that was maybe about a month ago. I did a whole almost 2 weeks on the male survivors, and because it's so important, right? It is so underreported, so the statistics just aren't going to be right. So they're saying some male victims might later point to this sexual abuse as the cause of confusion about their sexual identity. When the molester is female, boys are confused about how to interpret the experience. Is it sexual abuse or sexual opportunity? Because boys are socialized to want sex, cultural norms often cloud their perceptions of the experience. And they said here, because boys are supposed to be tough and able to defend themselves, they may be disinclined to speak up about having been taken advantage of in many cases. It may be a more convenient psychologically for them to interpret their abuse as a conquest rather than victimization. But the conflicts do not go away just because the abuse is cast in a positive light. So they said, that's terrible, and actually it's so true, right? So, there's lots of great support groups out there for men who are survivors of abuse and sexual abuse, and I just say, reach out to people, because there's I know lots of male survivors, and I know there's a guy, John. It's on Facebook. It's called Men Are Survivors Too. It's a resource for male survivors and women, because he didn't want to discriminate against women. But he's a great guy, and he's a good friend of mine. And he's a male survivor of domestic violence and just all kinds of stuff. The guy, he has some great resources. He's an awesome guy, and he loves to help people. And so, there are not just his group, but there's other groups out there where lots of male survivors are reaching out to each other, and I think that's so important. It is just so important, right? They need help too, and they deserve every bit of care and concern that women do, and that children do, right? Because they suffer just like everybody else, and so it's just it's so sad. Incest between mother and son is every bit as harmful as father-daughter incest. Mother-son incest is usually the outgrowth of a long-established seductive relationship that may then evolve into overt sexual relations when the boy reaches puberty and begins experiencing his own sexual awakening. They said this is an important dynamic that touches on issues of emotional abuse as well. Although some children may feel responsible, the responsibility always rests with the parent to set appropriate standards of behavior. In cases of mother-son incest, the mother is almost always incapacitated as a parent due to addictions, severe emotional problems, or her own unresolved childhood sexual abuse. So it is just sad. It's not the child's fault, and it's not, it is the parent's responsibility to set those boundaries and to make sure that it's the parent's responsibility, first of all, to protect their children and not to abuse their children. And so, it's really sad when survivors actually take that responsibility on and say, well, if I would have done this, or if I would have done that, it wouldn't have happened, or it was my fault, or it had to be partly my fault. And actually, there's no way it could be your fault, because it's the adult in the situation that is to blame. Children are not responsible for that. And it's so sad when people go their whole lives thinking that it's their fault, and it's just not right. And they said there are many factors that can influence the degree of impact of sexual abuse on a child. A child who has been abused by more than one offender is likely to be more traumatized, because the repetition of the abuse reinforces the child's attitude that he or she is somehow responsible. The type of sexual contact can also be significant, right? They said, when aggression or violence is used to force sex, the impact is even more negative, because the child feels fear and greater loss of control, as compared to more seductive molestation, in which persuasion or manipulation are employed. So, there's just so many issues surrounding it, and we just really have to make sure that it stops, like now. When it says here, when children participate to some degree in a sexual contact or are unable to find a way to prevent the abuse from happening, the guilt and shame over their involvement often causes severe consequences. So that's just so sad. It causes so many problems. And, it's just not right. It says, in cases where the sexual abuse occurs outside the home, the reaction of the family is paramount in shaping the degree of impact on the child. When the family is supportive, gets immediate help for the child, and avoids any blaming or stigmatization, the long-term effects can be lessened. So we have about about a minute left. So we'll finish talking about this Monday night, 9:30, same time. And there's just there's a few more pages left to this part of it. And I'm so glad that you could join in. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them. Their website, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, is loaded with lots of information regarding child sexual abuse and how to prevent, ways of prevention, how to get parents involved in making sure that their children are safe online, how to protect your children. And if you're a survivor, an adult survivor, there's all kinds of information on there regarding child sexual abuse as well, and all types of abuse. So it's a great website. I highly recommend it for for anybody who needs more information regarding child abuse prevention, awareness, and how to report it, what to look for, signs and symptoms, who's doing what. There's resources and all kinds of links and stuff. It's a great website, and I really highly recommend it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back on Sunday for a couple of shows. You can check my schedule there, and I just hope you take care. My heart is with you, and if you need anything, get a hold of me on blogtalkradio.com. You can send a message, and otherwise, I just hope that you keep the hope alive and keep walking towards your healing. Reach out to someone who you trust and who you can really rely on to be there for you, and you want to have good people in your life who can help you. And it's just so important to make those connections and get that support and possibly some, some professional help, some counseling or therapy. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.